Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back to my Stellaris tutorial series of kind. We are just starting. We have the prosperous unification start. We are a representative democracy with fanatic egalitarian, xenophile, environmentalist. See the Ranger Lodge, pause that to see what happens there. So I have a bit of a gripe with the tooltip, but we'll get into that later. Functional architecture, which lets us skip some starting technologies, and then we have ocean preference, ad- adaptive, charismatic, communal, sedentary, and unruly. We're starting in an ocean world. We have this fabulous backdrop, very regal looking executive. I'm not sure that we have the president. There we go. Prosperous unification. In the eons since the first primitive Rek'Valar communities took shape in the archipelagos and lagoons of Rakomak, our civilization has spread and prospered. We were driven forward by steady scientific progress, and armed conflicts between nation states became increasingly rare. The framework for a global democratic government was eventually laid, and when the last holdouts voluntarily joined, we stood united as a single nation. Now, after the discovery of the hyperlane network, the finest minds of the Rek'Valaran administration have finished their development of the first hyperdrives. The stars themselves are finally within our grasp. Now, when you hit the start button, it brings you into your system, but it spawns you out here in the galaxy. We've started on a small map, 400 stars, captain difficulty, and I will be walking through your first few steps. Now, let's start with the resources. Very daunting. We'll get to the notifications in a second. Previously, Stellaris had it that these would need to you would need to wait until the first month to get an accurate reading of these, but I think there is a tick or something. They've changed the way that it does the calculations, that it's always accurate the first month. We start here in our colony, our home world, really. Anything else that we come to inhabit will become our colonies. These specializations would not normally be available to us if it wasn't for our starting civic functional architecture. This essentially doubles the amount of jobs that you can get here, and once you spec into a specialization, can you go? Okay, you still need the technology unlock for the research specializations, but these are just resource consolidation. So agricultural focus, you get 100, is it 200 jobs per district? Yes, because we have four and there's 800. If I were to unlock this, but when it ticks over, we would then have 1600 jobs, I think, or perhaps. Okay, so we would have 1200. It's been a while since I played, but I figured I would do a series like this. Now our starting buildings normally I think that we would maybe start with an extra alloy foundry for our alloy production or something else in the archives. But because we started with the ranger, the environmentalist civic, we now have this. Now to get into my gripe with the tooltip, it says rain. I can't put my foot cursor over it, but it says that rangers are converted into rangers. The I guess it's difficult to tell the game what to put into that slot. What rangers are there's a bit of a mix overlap. You can get certain jobs that converge with each other, but I, I believe rangers are biologists. Yeah, so you can see right here, they're in the middle. So you have the physicists, you have the rangers, and then you have the engineers. Normally these would be called biologists, but because we have this, it changes over, meaning that our scientists are going out into the field and doing such things as these. Now, we have, not these, but actually, do we even have the effects here? No. So these are the natural blockers that start on our starting area. Now, because we have the Sol system, we have specific things, the Pacific algae tracks and the Delhi sprawl, but those would be called by a more generic name and a different thing. The Pearl River aggregate, you might recognize some of these. Oh, and we've got a very good starting with our leader. We've got architectural interest. Now, the very first thing, this is sort of an informal tutorial. It's more just like a let's look at and I educate you on the way in. Um, we can click on these and this will bring us to our technology screen, or we can look over here and we can hit the F4 key, which I'll do that now, and it also brings it up. We got our physics specialization, our research, we got our society research and engineering. At the moment, like, we have the ability to make our generators more efficient, and as well as energy that we get from starbase constructions. So, for example, here we have our starbase and we have a solar panel network. If I were to get this, it would add a 10% increase, meaning that instead of 6 credits, we would get 6.6. Quantum computing. This makes the amount of research produced by our physicists increased. So if we get this, it might have a very daunting starting cost, but as soon as we get there, all of the research afterwards will be much quicker because they're producing more per month. And I think, was there another one here? We alternatively we could also work on our fusion reactors. These are randomly generated, by the way. There's a set of technologies that you have access to that you are able to roll. Each time that you unlock a technology, you will roll on the table to determine what your next set of available options are, kind of representing random chance and whatever interests the scientific community has at that time that you can pour funding into. Our final option is, yes, we can work on fusion reactors, which will lead to advancement in different fields. These are essentially, in a gameplay mechanic sense, those will increase the, if I could look at the ship details for our construction ship, that increases the amount of power that our ships can produce and would let them, for instance, use energy-based weapons or more advanced shields, whereas they would be struggling with that. So if we come over here, the fact that we start with prosperous unification as our origin story means that we have this as a guaranteed option. You can see by the gold bar, means that it will never go away. You can research all of these. This will never be re-rolled until you research it. And then obviously it's done, so you don't need to go back to it. We'll be going with xenobiology because there's a chance that we might not see that again. And as you can see, the difference here is very stark. We have 115 months on our quantum research, and we have 55 months on xenobiology. That is because of our start. The Ranger Lodge from the environmentalist origin gives us an extra 200 scientists in the biology field, and as well as they also produce other resources like more trade and amenities apparently. Yes. What were the other options here? Fleet command limit, the amount of ships that you can have in one squad. And naval capacity is your total capacity for ships in your empire. Planetary unification makes it so this is a resource that you use for a bunch of society-based things. It also pays the upkeep that you have to pay to keep your leaders. We go with Xeno Labs. And then finally, engineering. We have coil guns. These are kinetic weaponry. Makes your ships a little bit tougher. It also, yep, leads to advancements in kinetic weaponry. So you get coil guns unlocked. You can get missiles and batteries and such. Geothermal fracking. You can get increased mining. Same principle as the field modulation, really, just in a different area. And then nanomechanics, which will increase the amount of research that our engineers produce. Very good, very good. It also apparently increases the amount of jobs available to that trade on any given planet. Interesting. Now, that's technology. We haven't started the game yet and we're 10 minutes in. My goodness. What is it? Yeah, it's 10 minutes. What is this? Empire focus. This is a relatively new mechanic in the game, added in the past few patches. So you can choose a focus for your empire for the first few years. You can have exploration, conquest, or development. Exploration is scientifically inclined and will be more likely to give you quests, essentially, for doing investigations on star systems and general scientific research. Activate an edict is white, so I think that's it says here it contributes to all of them. So this is a, what is the word? Agnostic quest. We have conquest over here, upgrade a starbase so that our borders are more defensible. That would go up to 800. That represents their military power, as you can see there, and it's like a little explosion, or like the muzzle flare. Yes, we were looking at this. On this is the situation log, so that you can reach this menu by hitting F1, and you can see all the tabs here. I'll open this for a moment, and maybe we'll go through these one by one, and I'll just show you what it does. Excuse me just a moment. And we're back. Let's take a quick break for a second there. So the situation log, events that come up when you research. So different things will show up here. There will be, if you trigger an event line with multiple events that are going to happen consecutively by perhaps researching an anomaly or something randomly happening, it will show up here in the situation log. It's very broad and agnostic. Empire focus, I've just explained. Anomalies, when you research, if I tell my little science ship to go out into a different system and then research a planet, it will show up there if they find something of interest. Victory screen we don't need to worry about for another 200 years. Government in the F2 tab. This represents the leaders that are in office, that are essentially running the show as conjoined. It's sort of like you could call it a council, but it's a set of executives in their respective fields, and this kind of represents the high logistic costs that even in a monarchy-run society would be necessary in order to run all the different things, because one person can't do everything, obviously. Policies and edicts. So this is our policies. This is the way that we approach different things. You have diplomatic stance. You can go through belligerent, which it will cost you influence to. This is a resource that we get monthly, and it represents the society's capability to influence events and sort of political grandstanding according to their relative power. So you can go belligerent. It will make it slightly easier to do warlike things. You get less exhaustion from being in a war. You get increased naval capacity, and it will cost you less. If you find a foreign empire, you can say, I want to take this system. And then you beat them in a war, and then you have that system as a result. Whereas if you just beat them in a war, theoretically, if you destroy them, is always an option, the system will become unclaimed, and any infrastructure in it, like mining stations or research stations, will decay and disappear over time. There's the cooperative one that makes it easier to say hello to people and get friendly with them. You get increased diplomatic weight. Your improvement, sending an envoy to improve relations, is more effective per month. And you get less border friction for having your borders shared with an empire. So if there was another empire here that we were right next to, we would get a negative buff, a debuff to our relations with them over time because of border friction. What was the other one? Operation cost, that's espionage. Operation upkeep, similarly, yep. So it would cost you more to start a spy operation against them because you're not built for that, and it would also cost more resources to keep their operation going. You also get the ability to... You have the ability by default to recruit leaders like admirals, governors, and scientists from other empires, and that gives you one more, whereas belligerent gives you one less. Isolationist gives you two less, increases your border friction quite a lot, and makes it so that people are more likely to follow your politics because they're not interacting with other societies as much. It also gives you increased unity for the same reasons. Diplomatic weight is decreased, and diplomatic agreement upkeep is massively increased. We are in expansion at the moment because we're on our own, we haven't met anyone, and it's the only thing to do at the moment. Outpost build cost, that's like space stations. You build a claim. You send your construction ship into another system, and it builds a station around the star, and that represents your claim on that system. And so if you do that, other empires cannot then go in and claim that without having to wage war on you first, usually. Mercantile. Corporate dominion. I didn't realize that was a thing. Oh, sorry, I'm being a bit careless with my mouse. A mega corporation that has completely supplanted the role of the state. Yeah. Corporate dominion civic. That, I don't know if that's a separate thing. That's part of the Megacorp DLC generally, though. You have supremacist, which is that you believe that you are so advanced in your military that you're just going to be like, we're so advanced in our military, beware of us. Antagonistic makes it so you want to have you're rivaled with a lot of neighboring empires, and are working in an arms race to accelerate your own scientific, cultural, economic development, purely just to spite someone. And then purification is the simplest one here. If you are a fanatic purifier, then kind of like the determined exterminator for the machine empires, you just want to kill everyone that you come across. Where are we? 17 minutes in, we're doing okay. Right, war philosophy. Unrestricted, you can just declare war whenever you like. Liberation wars, you can only declare wars for the purposes of imposing your ideology on an alien empire. And defensive wars means that you will only get into wars if someone declares war on you. Obviously, there's not an option to turn that off. Wouldn't it be a nice world to live in? subjugation war turns oppressive. So this would be if you declare war for the intent of subjugating or annexing a foreign nation that they must then pay tribute to you. They are then subservient to you. You can do it oppressively, which means, and I'll go for the terms here, integration is permitted. Over time, you will be able to integrate that empire into your own, and then their space will become your space, and you claim all of their infrastructure. This deletes that empire from the game, effectively, and means um, I was going to say something else there, but there wasn't anything else to say. They have limited diplomacy, so they are not able to make independent trade deals or agreements with other empires. Expansion prohibited speaks for itself. They cannot expand their empire or make new claims on systems. They must join all of your wars, and you will only join the wars on them that others declare on them. It also gives you a limit of one holding, which means a building that you can build on their planet. Excuse me, I was a bit stuffy there. Okay, subjugation moratoriums. Balanced is you cannot integrate over time. They have restricted voting. So when you meet enough empires, you'll get into a galactic community where you can do shared agreements upon how to conduct yourselves and such. They have the ability to make independent agreements with other empires, but must follow your vote in the galactic community for the implementation of new policies. Expansion regulated, they can claim new systems, but they must pay an additional influence cost in addition to. So it costs you by default like roughly 70 influence, and you can see we only get 3 per month, so it's a bit expensive to claim a new star system. They would have to pay more than that and also pay kind of like a tax. So they would pay the default claim for the system and then an additional amount that goes to you as the overlord. They only join your defensive wars and vice versa. And the subject holdings is the same. Let's see. Benevolent is integration prohibited. Independent diplomacy, they can make agreements as normal and make their own votes on the galactic community. Very ill advised. And they can also freely claim star systems. And then the war terms don't change. Orbital bombardment. If you have a military fleet on an alien colony, you can choose whether they will only try to bomb the army and minimize civilian casualties, or you can maximize the destruction level that will creep up over time on the building on the planet and will cause massive damage to their civilization count, to their population count on that colony. Orbital surrender. The policy controls whether or not we allow enemy planets to surrender control to our fleet during orbital bombardment. I believe that means if you successfully bomb the entirety of a navy of a foreign planet, then they will cede control to you as there's nothing left to do. But in practice, I've never seen this come up in a way that's immediately visible. Resettlement. This determines whether you, the player, can take some of your population. I think it's in management. Is it in management? It might be in. Yeah, there's the button, resettle. So you can take population from this and then put them on a new colony of yours, or just like any other colony that's in your system. This determines whether or not that's allowed. Now, a special thing here, because I've put sedentary on, if it would cost 100 credits to move 100 pop, which essentially represents 1 million people on, but it's truncated for logistic reasons. Instead of costing 100 credits, it would cost 135. First contact protocol. We have here, as we travel the stars, there is a definite possibility of finding other life forms, and we need to have a clear stance on how to approach them. We can be proactive. We cannot attack neutral entities. Other empires will find it easier to establish communications with us, and we gain 50% more influence from successfully contacting other empires. So you find another empire, you start trying to learn about them, learn how they speak, translate their language. Whoever gets to do that process first successfully gets a boon to their influence. And so it's slightly accelerated if you use proactive rather than cautious, but there's also the chance for them to, there's an increased chance for them to get there first. And you roll randomly at the end of each month to see whether you're successful or not in making that contact. Cautious, it's more difficult for other empires to establish communication, and it's less likely that negative first contact events are going to happen to you. So that means there's many things that could happen. They could try to hack into your computer systems in order to download a large swathe of your technological understanding and learn about you and spy on you a little bit, get ahead of the game. They could try to steal your ships, and there's a number of things that they can do after that, with the people on the ship. And then there's aggressive, which lets you do that and also lets you just fight them without first making contact. Initial border status. When you establish first contact, this will determine whether or not that other empire is able to freely move through your borders or not. You cannot stop them before initiating first contact, and there has been numerous cases where I've been playing this game and an alien empire has leapfrogged over one of my systems and claimed another one in the middle of my territory. Very frustrating. Let's see. Research restrictions. This will prevent us from getting dangerous or dangerous technology options completely, and it will also make rare technology less likely to show up. A couple of things that I think of off the top of my head is synthetic AI. So there's a lot of fear at the moment about LLMs and AI in the real world, and I will extremely briefly touch on this. LLMs are not a true AI. It's essentially a very advanced form of autocorrect. But this would be something like fully sapient AI, or integrated into your computer systems, or something else like FTL drives or jump drives and all the rest of it. Basically, technology that represents dangers, and then the rare technologies which are slightly less dangerous. Economic policy. Do we want more consumer goods or more alloys? Or do we want a balanced production of both? So consumer goods can make it very good if you're rushing technology focus, and militarized economy is very good if you're just trying to pump out as many ships as you can in order to manifest whatever your goals are at that time, whether that be defending yourself or taking over. 1 second. Right. Um, Sorry, I got distracted there. I had to go blow my nose. Research to breathe. When you destroy ships of other empires, you can you can get research points and try to unlock technologies from researching the different parts of their ships. So like reactor technologies. Over here, where was it? This. So if another empire has already unlocked fusion power, you can get a little bit of progress towards that, and I think it will also unlock it as a permanent option. that last part might not be true though, so we'll leave that there. And the other option is to get essentially alloys, maybe credits, consumer goods, but generally alloys from scavenging their ships. Refugees, you can choose whether or not to accept refugees. You can choose to only accept your own species, or you can open your home to all. Population controls. So this is useful if you want a boost in population and say that there's a alien empire out there that is attacking another empire and bombarding one of their colonies, or they've taken over a colony and are in the process of purging them, or doing something that they don't particularly like. There's a chance that that second empire will flee some of their population every month to another random colony in the galaxy, depending on who's got these settings on. Population controls, prohibited or allowed. To reproduce and propagate their species is the inalienable right of all our citizens. And then long-term demographics is too important a matter to be left solely in the hand of individual actors. Can use non-voluntary species and planetary population controls and can selectively grow and decline species. Yes. This game is quite inclusive, as you can see. Lots of running numbers, all running in tandem. So that would be something that you would come over here. Discourage population growth. You can reduce the population speed, the rate at which your citizens increase. 1 second. Right, I'm back. I was finding it a little bit difficult to breathe and had to air out the room a little bit. Where was I? Planetary growth, yes, you can or you can decrease the amount of population that is being produced by asking, quote unquote, your citizens to stop making babies. Distribute luxury goods, increases the amenities, and makes it more likely that people want to move to your planet. You can, as part of our civic, the environmentalists, that gives us our little ranger lodge here, you can expand preserves, which, if you have natural blockers, those produce resources. And having the nature preserve means that per natural blocker, you get a slight increase from the resources that the rangers produce. And then you can send artifacts to the museum exhibits, which means that your bureaucrats produce slightly more unity and trade over time. So if you have an empire that's specialized into that, that would be a very good thing to do. Back to policies and edicts. Slavery. You can either have it or not have it. And to be allowed to make the decision to have it, you have to have authoritarian or xenophobic ethics. And then there's purge. We're a democratic society, and we're fanatic xenophiles as well as egalitarians. Or sorry, the other way around. We're fanatic egalitarian xenophiles. So there's just no way that we would want to do anything other than that option. You must not have the xenophile ethic. And what is this? Allowed or displacement only? One must be true. You need to have fanatic xenophobe. Yes. I guess you can be xenophobic egalitarians. It's true, I've seen it. You believe in the right for a good life for all people. You just happen to have a very particular definition of what falls under that definition of a person. Fortify the border. This makes upgrading your star bases slightly faster. So you can see one of the situation log F1. Yes, we upgrade a star base. Now, normally I think that takes 720 days, so like a little over, a little under 2 years. Yes, that's correct. That would make it take a lot less. So instead of 720, it would be 370, 360. Yes. 1 full year instead of two. This edict that makes it more likely that the individual political affiliation of your population is likely to change. So if we look over here, do they have a particular traits? Ethics, egalitarian, and xenophile. So we have three different traits here. Three different. What is this? These two are contributing, are reproducing, and I'm not really sure what the distinguishment here is. They're being a civilian worker, civilian being promoted. There's a couple of things that haven't finalized here because we haven't progressed on the. I was thinking I would play the game today, but it's seeming that I'm just again explaining the mechanics of how this game works. And I think that in the next episode I will do so and perhaps cha-cha mechanics as I go through them without it being quite as in depth. So that's the policy and edicts menu. I should also explain the difference here. You can kind of tell this is how you conduct yourselves, and these are various bonuses that you can turn on or off. There's one that makes it so that you spend more energy in order to produce more resources, including for energy itself. Strangely enough, that represents the upkeep of the workers doing those various work. Here's the faction screen. After 10 years have passed, depending if you don't have an origin that changes that, by default it is 10 years into the game. Sorry, I used WD-40 on my chair yesterday, so it's tainted the air quality in here a little bit. After 10 years, these political parties will spawn in and they'll give you unity depending on how pleased they are with the way that you're conducting the empire's affairs. This is traditions. You spend unity in order to get different unlocks that gradually determine the way that you play and will give you bonuses for certain things. So I can't click it now, but one option would be expansion, which would make it less expensive to claim outposts and also make it faster to settle new planets as well as population growth overall. We have the technology screen. Here's the leader screen. You have officials, commanders, and scientists. These are the people that are doing all the big work in your society and determining how things go. Governors. So all three of these can govern a planet. Um, Basically, anything a governor can do, the other two can also do, but only certain leaders can fulfill certain roles. So the Minister of Defense can only be run by a commander. The head of research can only be run by a scientist. In previous iterations of the game, this was also possible for a governor, but no longer. The Minister of State is only available for a governor, and the ruler of your empire is whatever you feel like at that time. Governors have different effects. Um, they also have different specializations and interests that they can, when they level up, that they can unlock. Almost all of these can be used by eye for talent, architectural interest, and politician. These are things that can be unlocked for any of the classes. But unyielding is a thing that's only available for the commander class because you can't really send a scientist to command a space fleet. But you can send the scientists on science ships, and you cannot send a governor or a commander to do that same job. So that's one example. Only scientists can run science ships. Only commanders can command fleets. or the army slot on a planet. So you can have someone governing the planet, and you can also have a bespoke general that increases the effectiveness of your army if they're under attack and you need to defend. Right. Yes, I think that's pretty much everything. Architectural interest is extremely good because it lets you build your starting things so much faster. We also got a relatively, what is 35, and then we have a 42-year-old. Um, when you're, when you're in need of new services or you want to train someone up ahead of time, adaptable is a very good thing. It makes them level a lot faster. Fleet logistic, less expensive to run your ships if they're in command of it. If you're in need of a new leader for a future role or need one right away, you can come over here. It's good to look at this proactively to see there's a negative trait. Your army health is reduced, so they would be an okay fleet commander, but poor choice for a general. And indeed, that's very true. Actually, they both of their positive effects are for commanding a starfleet. And here's a scientist who has a special interest in industry. So if we want to um, research industry faster, which we very well might, we could move this creature out of the position of head of research and place the other individual in that role until we have that technology unlocked. Species. This would show you all the species you've encountered in this tab. And Empire species are any of the species that are living on your planets among you. You can set their rights, citizenship, subspecies integration. So you can make templates for your citizens that have different genetic or cyborg traits, and then you can tell them to integrate the rest of the population into that new set over time. Living standards, we are in. So if I change this, if I change any of these for a particular species, I cannot do so again for 10 years. I'm locked in. But because we're phonetic egalitarian, we get the option to unlock utopian abundance. This makes it so that everyone has an increased consumer good upkeep, but also have increased happiness. Your unemployed pops also have normal happiness, and your civilians, I think those are the same thing. So, no, actually, let me explain. You have specialists, elites, and workers. If you remove the ability for some specialists to work, they will become unemployed. After some time has passed, they will either demote to workers if there's available space, or they will become civilians, and that is how that works out. So you can change the various things over here. Decent living, social. I won't go through these exhaustively, but academic privilege is essentially increased production from your elites and specialists. Social welfare means that your civilians produce unity and everyone's mostly happy with things are because no one's having to fear poverty. Decent conditions are you've got slightly increased happiness for your elites and specialists, and your unemployed pops have reduced happiness because they're riding the poverty line. Stratified economy. This is to do with if you have slaves unlocked. Workers and slaves have reduced happiness. basic substance. This is if you are a xenophobic inclined empire, you might do this to keep a population alive, but barely. And then there's non existent. We do not budget for the dead. The species is in the process of being purged, and the pots from it will have no upkeep cost. Goodness me. Military service. So, full military service, you can hire them as infantry and also as leaders, so they will produce commanders. Soldiers only will prevent the production of leaders from that, so you cannot have commanders from a species that is soldiers only, but you can make infantry from them. And then exempt means that they're excluded from it altogether. Good if you have a species that has negative leader traits or has something like frail, where they have less army health. Colonization rights. This, if you go over here to the shipyard, you can produce a colony ship, and then you get a menu that asks you what species do you want to make this colony ship with. Then they go land on a planet, and they will fill it out with their species first. I'm not sure that there's any traits that specifically make colonization more effective, but there are things like adaptable, which right here means that they have more minimum habitability. So by default, another ocean planet, which we're starting on, would be 80, but because we have adaptable, it's 90%, and that has a bunch of effects like how much consumer goods they need, how effective resource production is on that planet, and how overall stable things are. So if you have someone that's got really low stats, you might turn that off because you don't want to have to scroll through them to get to the species that you want for a particular planet. Population controls. We went over this earlier, but it prevents them from being able to reproduce. Slight alterations to the daily sustenance of a species, their demographics become our plaything. Oh, what a horrible way. And then migration controls determines whether or not a species can flow freely between planet to planet. I think that also might include whether or not they're allowed to go to an alien world if you get a migration treaty. Indentured servitude. I can't look at these at the moment because this is our founding species, and then purge type is, these kind of speak for themselves. Are they enslaved or are they being removed from the empire? What is this? Reset to empire default, which is over here. And that's all the same thing. My goodness. Planets and sectors. Here you can manage your different planets and sectors. So by default, we have the capital here. The capital can run administration up to 4 sectors away. So 1, 2, 3, and then wherever that last one leads. We have more administrative capacity than we have vision at the moment because we've spawned inside a nebula, for better or worse. If you have another colony that is more than 4 jumps away from your capital, they can be made a local capital, like a sector capital. I think the difference between, I guess, to use a homegrown example, would be London versus Edinburgh. Edinburgh is a sector capital of Scotland, whereas London is the capital of the civilization. If we use the UK as a begrudged example, then from that, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then let's say that they're over there, you can also swap what systems they have administrative control over. And that's largely represented by the fact we have Merc running as the administrator of this planet, so they have local effects. if you have another colonized planet, the secondary effects of their traits will also take effect. So if that planet does not have a governor of its own, they will get decreased upkeep to their infrastructure, and they will build slightly faster because Merc is overseeing production efforts, you know. Or you can have them put their own leader on that planet and their traits will apply. I do not think you can get stacking bonuses, but that may be incorrect. I'm not sure. Normally, another planet, you will see Merc's icon in the background, but the main portrait will be empty. And you can also, when you have a sector as a capital, you can then turn that into a subject. So that will be a new empire that is in a subsidiary relationship to your empire, and then you can specialize them into different things as you can with a normal empire. So if you are running into logistic concerns that might threaten the stability of your empire in the long term, you can chop off a limb and have it grow into another body that serves your interests variously. F8 down here, expansion planner. This will show you all the planets that you've discovered that are potentially habitable. And as we can see here, Mars is one such area here, but in order to do so, we need to first unlock climate restoration technology. So we need to restart the magnetosphere. We need to put an atmosphere down. We have a dust bowl, and we need to start everything from scratch. But because Mars has shown that we know, using this specific example, because Mars has shown that it has had an atmosphere in the past, means that it is possible to sustain it again in the future, with perhaps a slight bit of oversight. And of course, those are on this game works on a very truncated time scale in order to facilitate functioning as a game. So terraforming a planet would usually only take about 10 in-game years because you only have 200 to work with, or 300 by default. Now let's see, 8. If we find another planet here, which we will as soon as we walk around here, maybe. I think I had guaranteed habitable planets turned off, whereas if I had it turned on, you would see within 3 jumps or so, we would see at least 2 planets that had the same type as our world, which is an ocean world. F9 is our fleet manager. This is where we can create squadrons and add build orders, and then any available ships in the area will automatically fulfill those queue orders when you ask them to reinforce that squad. I'm sorry. We can create new designs. At the moment, we only have the technology unlock for a corvette or a defense platform, which is built on a local space station. You can build those on unupgraded stations, but there's a limit to how many defense platforms they can sustain, which increases as you upgrade the station. Contacts, if you run into another empire, this is where they'll show up. You can see fallen empires, which are a special thing. They've been around a long time and they're not very interested in interacting for the most part. Pre-FDL civilizations, anyone in the non-spacefaring stage, other TM, conclaves and such, and non-player. I think that last one means special contacts. If anyone knows what grey is, I'm not sure why you're watching this video in that case, but it's there are very limited very few cases in which this applies, because the fallen empires count as players. It might work differently. You could say just it's anything that's not a player, which would also make sense. There are special items that you can find called relics, which usually have passive effects, but can also be activated once every 10 years to give your empire a special bonus of a sort. I think I went through most of these. Claims lets you put a claim on a system. If you're in a war with another empire, or you get into a war with another empire and you have a claim on their system, when you defeat them, that system will then fall under your jurisdiction. It is more expensive to make claims during war than it is beforehand. Always keep that in mind. Resources. When I get into this is very useful. You can use your monthly trade income, which is determined by. There's a bunch of things that we got. We got it from traders, we got it from entertainers, and at the moment we get it from our rangers. In abundance because of the environmentalists. Go over here. Per month, there is a limited amount that you can buy before inflation kicks in, so it will inflate the price immediately and then go back down over time. You can buy lots of amounts at once, or you can buy monthly. There is a math to how much you can buy per month without the price going up exponentially, and that will be located on the wiki, but you can also go over that amount if you have the upkeep to sustain against inflation. So you can buy, of the basic resources, you can buy 42 or you can sell 64, and the market will stabilize each month according to that. These prices are also affected once you establish contact with other empires and the galactic trade market becomes a thing, which is essentially a commerce hub that gets built on a particular planet, which you can nominate one of your colonies for. I think you can buy 21 consumer goods and sell 46, and you can buy 10 alloys and sell 21. That's the numbers off the top of my head. There's also rare resources. I think there's exotic gases, and then extremely rare resources such as dark matter, living metal, and what is called Zro, which is essentially psionic dust, like from Dune. There might be another thing there that I've not remembered, but yeah, that is the whole menu. Over here, much more basic. You have overview, you have your different sectors, you have your planet, you have your military ships, you have your civilian ships. At the moment, we've only got a construction ship and a science ship, and you also have your shipyards. It would behoove you to learn very quickly how to mod, and I may also make a video series on that, to get a tiny outlier, which is very useful later on in the game and compactifies this menu so that you just see the numbers and such, and they get rid of the graphics, and all the different tabs and such are made more streamlined. This is ships only without the planets. I think that's just about everything. Yep, you got your energy, you got minerals, you got your food, you got your consumer goods. This basically sustains your sustains your population. It represents a broad variety of abstract things: headphones, things, plushies, things that they use to make their job possible. I suppose in such a sense as like glass made artifacts. It's anything and everything really. I could come for specific items, but these are largely used in bulk by researchers or priests, which I think bureaucrats also use these in large numbers. Yeah, so if you have a spiritualist empire, instead of bureaucrats, you would have priests, and those would produce large amounts of unity. Spiritualist empires are very good for unity rushing, which is to unlock a bunch of these all at once earlier into the game than most would. Because we have environmentalist and get a large boost to our scientists, our biologists, we could lean into those and get a bunch of society research done. And sort of accelerate the development, the local development of our like civilian infrastructure and such. Then you have physics. You have research over here. You have empire size. If you get too much empire size, past 100, you will start increasing your costs for research in Unity. So that your traditions will cost more, your technology will cost more in order to get to it, and I think that there's other logistic concerns as well. Edicts become more expensive per month, which is a more personal thing. The empire also becomes easier to infiltrate because it's as you get larger, it becomes more difficult to have prudent oversight. Envoys, these are your ambassadors to other empires. You can send them to improve or harm relations. You can also send them in as spies. You have your limit for your starbase capacity. So at the moment, this increases depending on how many colonies that you have, and acquire more owned systems or utilize certain technologies and traditions. Once you go over that cap, very quickly the upkeep of those star bases and their constructions will become very much more expensive. So something that costs 10 energy credits a week, a month to upkeep will, depending on the percentage modifier, it goes up very quickly. But instead of paying 10 credits, you'll pay 15. But you'll also pay an increase for the upkeep of all the buildings there as well. So this ship here, if I go to, okay, it's not showing up here, but it's here. We have an upkeep of 2. That would turn to 3 if we had 4 star bases. It escalates very quickly because star bases are very important strategically. You put choke points over here to defend the outer layers. So ideally, we would want to have maybe, if this goes anywhere, like to here or here, we would want one here to put a choke point and defend our stellar space. And then last we have naval capacity. With that, oh goodness, you also have hotkeys down here. You can lock your navigation bar. You can very quickly look at, by clicking on this, you can look at your own thing. So you can look at your society and check all of your different stats and stuff. You can reform your government to change your civics and authority if you have the capability to do so. Fanatic egalitarian locks us into being a democracy. Demographics, I'll let you read all this. Your happiness, pop growth, lithoid pop growth, and bio pop growth. So lithoid are like a rock species. We don't have that unlocked because I don't have the DLC enabled right now. There's quite a different lot of them. There's different portraits and stuff, but lithoid are like a specific species. They're basically rock-like in nature. We have all the different advisors.
You seem overworked. Have you considered joining a union?
So true. Here's all your different details and such. I would recommend going through these personally once you get into your game to kind of see what's going on and toggle them off. So you can see the details here. It adds how much resources we're getting out of that have already been capitalized on. And if we turn those off, it shows the resources that we have not yet gotten. So this is good for keeping track of like how important systems are. Players map mode. Only empires controlled by human players are colored on the main galaxy map. This is not available on single player because obviously you're the only one there. Opinion. Empire borders will be colored based on their opinion of the selected empire. That's worded strangely, but if you have an alien empire that is friendly with you, they will have a certain color, whereas if they're hostile, they'll have a different color. If they're neutral, they'll be like, and I think it changes depending on how good or how bad your relations are in escalating points. Yes. Empire borders will be colored based on their AI attitude towards the selected empire. Okay, so not you specifically, but if you click on them, the other empire borders around that will have a different color. Neighbor mode will show you which empires are considered to be your own empire's neighbors, so that's ones that are sharing a border with you. Sectors map mode displays the sectors, so as I explained earlier, if there's a colony over here that's the governing capital of that area, they'll show up distinguished from our central one in Rekomak. Hyperlanes turns these on and off, which is how you get to different star systems. This is how we represent faster than light travel in order to, facilitate gameplay. Empire map mode will be colored with the primary color of their flag. Yes. Oh, that's different. Okay, yeah. So each of these puts a specific thing on. We put this on, and it becomes the cyan of our flag. Unions map mode shows political unions such as subjects and federations in the same map color on the galaxy map. So again, if we freed our little sector over here of our control and to operate under us as a subjugated empire, then they would that's how that would be affected. Diplomatic map mode will be colored based on their diplomatic relations to the selected empire. What is the difference there? AI attitude. I'm not sure if attitude is disposition or if it's. Apparently, those are two distinct things. I encourage you to experiment and find out, but I will probably try and demonstrate it later. Much later. Intel map mode. Empire borders will be colored based on their intel available in the selected empire. So that's how much espionage knowledge that they have of other empires. It doesn't necessarily need to be espionage though, because if you have extremely good relations with another empire, you'll naturally be sharing information back and forth. So you have a lot of intel on them. Finally, lets you go to your home system. Search lets you see star systems on the map. At the moment, we don't have any unlocked because the nebula has prevented us from scouting our neighborhoods. But we have the databank here, which shows you can learn all about concepts in the game. Oh goodness, a very useful menu. I'm a little bit fried. I've been talking for an hour straight. And then finally, we have the main menu. Save, load, settings, menu. Exit to the main menu where you can like go and make a different empire, try a different map and such, and then desktop closes the entire client. Then you can resume. Privacy policy, very useful thing to have. With that, oh, there's also the music button. we are finally done with the introduction of the game. You can use spacebar to pause and unpause. I won't be doing that just yet. And you can use minus and plus on your keyboard, assuming that you don't have scroll lock or some strange function on your keyboard that changes the way that the keys behave, to change the speed of which your game is going. And that is the user interface for Stellaris. Thank you very much for joining me. I am going to have a very large cup of tea and lie down. I hope you enjoyed this. And feel free to join me next time when we finally play the game proper and I guide you through various events and talk your ear off. As always, if you enjoyed the video, I do hope you'll join me next time. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe. It does help the channel, and obviously engagement will allow these tutorials to reach more people who might be looking for the same sort of thing. Also, if you know anyone who is similarly trying to dip their feet into playing Stellaris as a whole and they might benefit from something like this, feel free to send this video their way. And that's all. Be well, take care, and have a fabulous day.